got some rhodos here. I'm just going to look at how you pollinate these. There's a bit of a trick to this. I guess the unusual thing with these is if you look at the pollen anthers here, they're a bit different in that the pollen doesn't shed when the flower opens like most flowers do. The pollen tends to be held within the anthers, and it sort of has to be mechanically stimulated to release, and it doesn't just, it more or less shoots out as it's stimulated. I guess what happens in nature is the bumblebee lands in here, and the buzzing movement triggers the pollen to release, and it almost shoots out of the anthers. It's not shed as such. It's going to be a bit hard to see on camera, but what I tend to do with these is try and get it to release but not actually shoot away from the anthers, and try and just remain on the anthers, so it makes it a lot easier to apply. So what I'll do is pick a flower like this and just give it a few taps with a finger, and there we go. If you look closely, you'll see just on the end there, it's just starting to release. You see that hanging off. It sort of comes out in stringy. It's not grains. It's almost stringy. So you can see that there on the try and get that to focus on the end of that anther. So yeah, so the more you flick it, the more will be released, and you can see it's ripe because it's basically once the flowers are open and fresh, and often you'll see on the end of the anthers, you see the two little yellow dots on the end of the anthers. That seems to indicate that they're fresh, but they will remain, the pollen will remain viable for quite a long time. So that's what I'll do to release the pollen. So that's ready now to pick and take that to the flower you want to pollinate. So when it comes to looking for a flower to pollinate, you want one that's receptive. So you might be able to see there on the pistil, that one's quite wet and sticky, and if I put my finger in it, you probably can't see on the camera, but you can see it's pretty much glistening there. So that's ready to receive and be pollinated. So what I would normally do is tear off any of the, I'm going to pick that flower. Come off. And just try and set up my phone. So what I would normally do is pick all of the, and this is for being pollinating, whether you're pollinating with this flower or whether you're using it to be pollinated, just take all the petals off, so that'll stop insects being attracted to it if it's the one that you're pollinating. There we go. So give that another bit of a flick there, get some more pollen to release. Oh, there we go. You can see in the middle there's a good stringy piece of pollen. So what I'll do is find another flower in here that's come up. So I've got another flower here, I've just picked it, and for clarity's sake, obviously you wouldn't pick it because they have to be attached to the plant to ripen. So what I would do is, pick all the petals off, so keep the insects away. Eyeball that and make sure it hasn't already been pollinated. You can tell once they've been pollinated, they go quite yellow, and then just take that and apply that pollen that's been released earlier when you gave it a tap, and you'll see that's quite noticeably going yellow now. Give that another tap if you have to, release some more pollen, More come out there. Apply that. So what you'll end up with is, you can see that there, it's quite obvious it's got the pollen on it, and up to you how liberally you apply that. Basically once the whole thing is reasonably yellow, you can safely assume it's pollinated. And what I do is tag that particular flower or that bunch of flowers, that truss. I use bread tags or plastic tags, you can use whatever you want, and pick any of the flowers that haven't been pollinated, so there's no confusion when it comes to picking the seeds, in case there's any self-pollinated ones or open pollinated. So once that's done, you can more or less leave that alone, and these take a long time to set seed. So you're basically waiting almost a year, so I'll show you what they look like. Now bearing in mind this is November in New Zealand, so this is actually a little late. This is about the latest you can harvest the seeds here, but you can see the brown capsules there from last year's flowers, and they're well and truly open, so I don't bother covering these or putting a bag around them to collect them, because the rhodos actually hold their seeds for quite a long time on the plant, so within those capsules, even when they're open like that, they will retain quite a lot of seeds, and because the seeds are so fine and there's so many of them, you only really need a few, and rhododendron's is quite a big shrub. You can't exactly be growing on hundreds or thousands of seedlings, so you really only need a small handful of seeds. So what I'll do is anywhere between sort of mid-winter and now, so this is sort of early summer, late spring, yeah, as these pods start to open, so initially they'll just open at the very tips once they're brown and going woody, and then eventually they end up sort of star-shaped like this and properly open. But what I'll do is, when I'm ready to collect them, is just go through and I'll pinch out that entire last year's truss. I'm going to try and do this carefully. There we go. So that's what you end up with. So if you've pollinated it yourself, you might only have 1 or 2 flowers, because there's no need to pollinate all of them. You'll get tons of seeds anyway. So what I normally do then is carry with you a cup or a bowl, or you can come bring them back home and just turn them upside down, bang them on a hard surface, and sure enough, these ones are quite old, so they're breaking up, but you'll see there's still plenty of seeds in there. All of those, you got a lot of rubbish from the seed pods, but all of those little smaller like that, they're seeds. So still truckloads of seeds in there, and you can go ahead and sow those. And I've got another video there showing you how to sow them and grow them. They're a bit fiddly to grow, and they're really slow, but reasonably straightforward. You just keep them out of the sun and keep them moist, and I cover them with plastic, and then you don't have to worry about watering them so often. So there you go.